Welcome to the Coffee with Karen podcast, a weekly chat show discussing everything from holistic health to current affairs from a mental, physical, and spiritual perspective. Get your weekly cup of positivity with a sprinkling of woo-woo.
Welcome to the show. Today's episode is number 189. And today we have Ryan Mayer, who is a certified ADHD coach. And we're going to be talking about how to get your brain to actually work while at work. I need to listen to him. I'm your host, Karen Roberts, helping coaches and therapists to get their message heard to the people who need to hear it. Now, Ryan, professional life coach, is an accountability and mindset coach, but he specializes in working with adult men and women with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder or ADHD. Now, Ryan himself has ADHD. I've never been tested, but many tell me that I'm probably have. Now, Ryan calls on personal experience to equip his clients who may feel like they're constantly falling short at work and at home with the strategies to step into the happier life that they deserve. His performance and mindset coaching helps others navigate through the storms in their lives caused by ADHD. He earned his coaching certification through ADDCA, a coaching certification program accredited by the International Coach Federation. And he lives in Cleveland, Ohio, in the US of A, with his beautiful wife, Andrea, and their three adorable children, Ethan, Lila, and Shane. I've met Lila.
Yes, you have. Yes, you have.
So welcome to the show, Ryan.
Karen, I'm so glad to be here because turns out I am parched and I could use a big cup of positivity with actually a healthy heap of woo-woo.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's what we like. Let's what we like.
Scoop it in there.
Well, before we get into the subject matter, would first you like to share with the listeners a little bit more about your backstory? Because that's really quite a niched coaching program that you offer. So how did you get here?
I'm so glad you asked because it really is the fuel to my fire. Because I give, through my coaching, I give what I most longed for so many years when I was in the corporate world that I just never got, which is understanding and acceptance. So it's such an honor for me to play a role, even albeit a small one, in my clients' lives to help them know, hey, you're not alone in this fight anymore. And I understand that you're working really hard and things may not be adding up at work or at home. And I can give them the strategies that work for their ADHD brain so that when they are at their place of employment, they can get the results that get the respect that they've been longing for. So the way that I got here is by looking all around, asking for help, not finding any. So then I was having to figure out my own way to get through. And now now that I'm on the other side of it, I can turn around and help my fellow folks with ADHD to navigate through these storms because I know how hard it is. I know how dark it can be. And so having been fired from several jobs, I'm not scared to admit that because I think a lot of people, they want to say, well, in my amazing track record, but I'll say I tried really hard, but my ADHD and my skill set didn't always fit the best for what these companies were looking for. And it won't astound anyone who's listening who has ADHD to know that I was really, really good on the front end. I could do great presentations. I was amazing at building connections quickly with clients. But when it came to the follow through and the organization, that's where, as my friend would like to say, that's where the wheels fell off. So unfortunately, when we looked at I'm using air quotes for anyone who's listening, the duties as assigned, it didn't always match up. So I remember this moment. It was a pivotal shift in my life when my wife asked me, Because she's like, Ryan, your family and me, we're worried about you. Like, you're not happy. You're trying so hard, but it's clear you're not happy. If you could do anything, what would you do? And I said, I would want to be an ADHD coach so I can help other people know that this doesn't define them, these storms that they're in, and that they can be so much more. And I can help them to basically look at life through a different lens and figure out the path forward without having to fall on their face as much as I did. And so she was like, hey, if that's what you want, why don't you just go do it? Like, I just want you to be happy. And so that having that reassurance and support from her meant the world. And so I started right in the midst of the pandemic. And it was actually a blessing in disguise because, as people can understand, there was a lot of mental health needs at that time because everyone's world was getting turned upside down. My business grew like crazy. And it's funny to even say this, but part of the reason was because I went on social media and just authentically shared some of my struggles with ADHD. And I grew in 60 days. I went over 300,000 followers. It's just like, still blows my mind. Now I'm up over 500,000 followers on social media. Follow me at ADHD Coach Ryan. And so that kind of brought me up to where I'm at now. Karen, I've coached people from 20 different countries. So it's like to be able to go from, yeah, Ryan, we're not going to need your services anymore, and getting kicked to the curb, taken out with yesterday's trash. Now people are seeking me out. So that's kind of what brought me here.
Wonderful. But for you, then personally,
Mm-hmm.
how did you even know you had ADHD? I mean, look, I know you're a lot younger than me, but years ago people didn't really talk about it. I can remember my mum saying about ADHD and that maybe it's linked to the preservatives or the extra things put in a lot of the drinks. But you still, I haven't got that. I'm fine. When did you find out that this was the issue?
Well, I just want to make sure I respond to your story first too, because that narrative is so familiar to me. And it's not surprising because it's a generational thing where people were just going off of what they knew. And, in the last 10 years, the awareness of neurodiversity has gone way up, which is great. Like 10 years, 20 years, 30 years ago, people just thought you're making excuses. You're being lazy. Like, look around you. Everybody else can do the work. It's not always going to be fun, but you have to just figure out a way to get it done. But the hardest part, Karen, I think for people with ADHD is we are trying. And because our disability is invisible, it makes it hard for us to understand for ourselves, but also for those around us, whether it's teachers, friends, loved ones, partners, boyfriends, girlfriends. Like, they don't understand why it's so hard for us to do some of these things. So I first learned about it really when I was in high school, because I was struggling in a lot of the more quantitative subjects, and I was putting in the work. I was going in early to meet with tutors, staying late. My parents were super supportive of me. Things just weren't quite adding up, no pun intended. And so we decided to explore getting some additional help. So I ended up getting a diagnosis of ADHD in high school. And then once I got to college is where I really was able to start taking advantage of the accommodations that are given to someone who has ADHD and has an official diagnosis. So I went from nearly having a panic attack in an accounting exam. I'll never forget. It's in like the stereotypical, and again, Karen, I don't know in the UK what it looks like, but I was in like kind of that big lecture hall, like the stadium seating. And I'm going to see if everybody can hear this up by my microphone. So this is a clicking pen. Well, when you have ADHD and it's a quiet room, this is all you hear. Mm-hmm. I could hear the clock ticking I could hear people chomping on their gum. I could hear people clicking their pens. I could hear people tapping their feet. All the while, I'm looking at my exam and thinking, is this a different language? So yeah, I had to excuse myself and like put cold water on my face because I'm like, okay, you're hyperventilating. Everything's going to be fine. But anyways, after that, I was able to get a distraction reduced environment and get extended time for the tests that I took. And that made a world of difference. So I'm proud to say I made it through undergrad. I even got my graduate degree, my master's in business administration, and then obviously my coaching certification. And what I'll say about my graduate degree and coaching certification, it's amazing how, and I think you've found this in the work you're doing, Karen, when you find something that you're really interested in when you have ADHD, get out the way because we can lock onto that. And I loved school when I was going in to learn about coaching. So just want to throw out a beam of hope for anybody out there who's listening who has ADHD and you feel like you are just drowning or you're drifting and you're not sure what's going to happen. When you find that thing, that calling, you'll know because it's something you can pay attention to and you love doing.
That's why I call it a superpower because, that's why I suppose I've just naturally gone into things that I loved doing, and then I would be able to focus. But again, I didn't know about this. So how
Right.
would a person know if he or she has ADHD? Right? Can you give us some sort of real life examples that people could relate to?
I just spoke with a client yesterday and she was telling me an all too familiar story it just breaks my heart because she's actually in law enforcement, super successful woman, but at home things are a lot tougher. So like she can be the one that rolls up to an emergency and let's say that like she told me the story about she was at a murder scene and she's having to call the shots for her and her team of like what to do. But then at home, when she has to like pay the lighting bill or decide what to cook for her kids or do the laundry and get it all done and not forget it in the laundry or something. So not saying that someone has to be even graduated to see the situations pop up in their lives. But if you find that the mundane kind of everyday tasks are really hard to do, like you look at a pile of dishes and you're like, ugh. Now, don't get me wrong. No one likes cleaning dishes. But for those of us with ADHD, the things that we already know exactly how it's going to go, like, okay, I'm going to open up this cell phone bill. I'm going to pay it and I can keep making phone calls. It's like, yeah, I'll just do that later until we don't. And then we get a late charge or whatever. So I would say for someone, if they are suspecting this, for me academically, it was even when I studied, even when I went to the tutor, I was really struggling during test because I would have test anxiety and then it would take me much longer. I was always the last one to finish exams. And then simple things like how this still shows up in my life is when I'm interested in something, I'll remember every little detail of the conversation. But if someone asks me, hey, what are you doing this weekend? Or what do you want to order off of this menu? Like things that are just like not engaging to me, it's very, very challenging to like focus enough on it to get it done. I hope that helps.
Right. Yeah. I can relate. It's quite scary.
Yeah.
But I mean, as you said earlier, there's a big misconception there. People could see you as being lazy. So
Sure.
For those with ADHD, and you said that it's difficult to, feel like you're being productive or, you might feel burnt out or just not in the mood. How do you recommend getting productive and staying there?
Yeah. So first off, I want to equip all of the listeners who either have ADHD or like you, Karen, if you suspect that you might be kind of in the realm of ADHD, if someone encounters that, this is one of my pet peeves too, which is when someone says, well, isn't everyone a little bit ADHD? And it's like, it just boils my blood because, yes, everyone has some aspects of forgetfulness or where did I leave my keys or not remembering to pay a bill or their room is a little bit messy. The difference is when this chronically has a severe negative impact on our lives, like it's inhibiting us, for example, in progressing in our careers or even keeping a job, or if we're going into debt, but yet we're still going out and making impulse purchases, even though we know we shouldn't, or we're making really poor life decisions, whether it's in relationships or, addictive behavior, things like that. Those are really ADHD. So what do we do to get support? Well, I would say it's worth at least exploring getting a diagnosis if you think you might. And it's okay if you don't end up getting an official diagnosis. But I have a lot of people who follow me on social media that will say, well, I'm, 50 years old. I'm 62. I'm, 32. Is it even worth it for me to get a diagnosis? And I will say, jokingly, well, I mean, you've gone this long. So, I mean, you could just live the rest of your life, struggling with the same stuff if you want. It's always an option. Or you could just have a conversation with your doctor. Who cares how old you are? Age is nothing but a number. We can't change the past, but we can start rewriting the future. And I always tell the story. I'll never forget when this really nice older gentleman, like I'm almost 40, so I have to say what is older now? But he's in his 70s. So I spoke with him when he was 75. And he told me, Ryan, I didn't get diagnosed with ADHD until I was 71. And this has been 4 of the greatest years of my life because finally I understand why. It gives words and it validates all of the struggles and the challenges we've had, that we're not crazy. We're not broken. Here's the analogy I give. If someone needs to wear glasses and they never knew that glasses or contact lenses existed, imagine what it would be like if someone said, oh, did you realize you need glasses? And then for the first time in their lives, they wear glasses and they go, wait, what? The world looks like this? So it doesn't matter when you get glasses. It's still going to be a great improvement when you do.
But how? So just because you're aware, and I get that, it's it's going to help you feel like, yeah, okay, I'm not being nuts. I'm not, just not doing the mundane stuff. But how will that change what you do on a daily basis?
Couple of ways. One, I'm going to go through the process really quick. So someone would talk with their doctor, normally a general practitioner, and they can either they can make the assessment and diagnose with ADHD, or they would refer out to a specialist, behavioral health specialist. So let's say someone gets a diagnosis. Well, now the next thing is the possibility of medication. Now, this is a hot button topic. Some people are pro medication. Some people are anti medication. Again, in my opinion, the following is not medical advice. I would say it makes sense to at least try ADHD medication to see if it makes a positive difference. And the research by Dr. Russell Barkley is conclusive that it is the most powerful and arguably the easiest form of managing your ADHD is getting medication. However, regardless of if someone gets medication for their ADHD or not, what do they do? What makes a difference or whatever? Knowing now, getting that validation. Okay, I do have ADHD. I think it helps you to show up more confident in the world. It's going to help to fight off that imposter monster that's always talking in your head about the self-sabotage. You can't do this. You've always been such a failure. You're not going to be able to do this thing. It's yes, I can. Yes, I can. I've done other things. And that was my ADHD before, but now I know about it. So be quiet, imposter monster. But then what people can also do is now they can advocate for themselves, Karen. So they can not only, maybe they seek out the services of a therapist, or maybe they work with an ADHD coach like me. Or even if that's not something they want to do, they can start framing things up in a more ADHD friendly way. So even simple things like, and people are going to roll their eyes, writing down things like a list of things to do. Human brains aren't made to be like a long-term storage. Like, we don't need to remember everything. There's computers for that. So I have what I call my butterfly catcher, which is when I have that beautiful idea that floats across my vision. And I'm like, oh, I have to go chase that butterfly right now, because if I don't, it's going to be gone forever. Karen, I know that part of this is going to be on video. So I'll tell everyone, for those who are listening, I have something that I call my awesome ideas notebook.
Love that.
So it's literally just like my right within arm's reach all the time, so that if something pops into my head, like for example, I wrote on here, meeting with Karen. This is coming out in September, 4 p.m. Eastern, September 6th, positivity and woo-woo. Anything I want to like remember, I put in here so that I don't have to try to remember it. And then I have a system in place where I'll put it into a task manager. And then I also have a team of people that help me to keep everything organized.
And that is the thing, isn't it? I suppose somehow I've sort of, I think, got through that without understanding why I've needed to do that.
Yes.
If that
right.
makes sense.
Yes.
But with regards to, so say a while ago now, probably about a year ago, I had a guest on here talking about the difference between introverts and extroverts. Now, yeah, of course, I know I'm an extrovert, but I never really understood the difference and what each one needs, which was incredibly great for me because I have an introverted daughter, and I would be concerned about her in certain ways, and it helped me as well as her, because I was like, okay, no, she's okay. She needs her own space, but she's okay. And also the way I then dealt with her, like for instance, you said earlier about, don't ask me what I want to dinner for dinner or what I want from the menu.
Right.
Even with her, I have to say to her, look, darling, have a little think about what you'd like. Mm-hmm. And when you're ready, come talk to me. So I can't put her on the spot. So it's really interesting now that we're learning about all these different things, because then we have the knowledge to then, okay, well, rather than go, well, what? Because I used to joke. My joke would be, because she'd say, I don't know. I go, well, who does?
You're right.
But now it's like, oh, okay, I understand. That's how you function. So I'll give you warning. So then you need time and then come back to me. So the same way with ADHD, I suppose it's just all about people need to have this understanding so that they can show a little bit of compassion and deal with people slightly differently, which, I know there's lots of, different things, but we've all got to learn how to get the best out of each other.
Right.
Rather than harassing someone in the wrong way and actually putting them down. So what kind of things would benefit somebody that is suffering with ADHD? You've mentioned the list things, and I wouldn't be able to operate, and thank goodness for systems. If this was 20 years ago when I was running this business now, there's no way I'd be able to cope.
Yeah.
No way, because of how I work.
Yeah.
But yes, thankfully there's lots of things now that tools and things that, but yeah, what kind of things would we need?
There are so many things that I can think of that can make such a big difference very quickly. One, which I know is very important to you in the work that you've done in the background that you have, which again, you didn't even realize, but what a coincidence that you were in fitness for so long. Because I like to say to my clients, movement is mandatory for the ADHD brain. First of all, as we all know, humans aren't made to sit still anyway. So the fact that like the other day I had I think 9 hours of Zoom calls in one day. But the point is, we can't expect to be our sharpest if we are staring at a screen all day. So I will tell my clients, make sure you're getting movement in. And it doesn't have to be something really official, like I'm going to go work out and do a leg day at 8 a.m. What if you just took one of your calls or one of your meetings on the go and you listened to it on your phone instead of sitting at your desk? Or maybe you get a standing desk, or maybe you just walk around while you're on the call or whatever. So movement would be one thing, because doctors John Ratey and Ned Hollowell, they talk about this in ADHD, a book called ADHD 2.0, and Dr. Ratey wrote a book called Spark. And what Dr. Ratey says is that if you took an antidepressant and an ADHD stimulant and put them together, the benefits of those, that is essentially the effect that exercise has on all brains, but especially for ADHD brains. So it helps us to regulate. That's why if most people who work out, but especially ADHDers, if you do cardiovascular exercise for at least 20, 30 minutes, and this could be even walking, for several hours afterwards, you're going to feel like you can take on the world. And this focus is there. So that would be a really simple one. The other is just creating some structure in your day. And what I mean by that is don't allow your actions to be dictated by things like your inbox. So in other words, be proactive instead of reactive. So the way that I've done that, and obviously everyone's going to be different, but just to give you a sense of what I mean, I have my day scheduled out. And I like to say that someone with ADHD, our brains are like a balloon. They will get blown in any direction. And unless they're tied on to something, they may blow away, and we'll be really upset when it's gone at the end of the day. So I am on calls either with my team or my clients pretty much all day, just so that I can keep myself on track. So I would say finding somebody that can help keep you accountable. And there's a great resource I want to share. It's totally free. You can pay $5 a month for the unlimited subscription, but it's called Focus Mate. So this is an idea it's called body doubling, which some people are like, oh, like a stunt person. No. This is someone who will sit with you on a call because they're working on something, you're working on something, but you work alone on your tasks together. So that could be in person or virtually. And finding that resource was a game changer for me. Because if my team isn't available or I don't have a meeting, I fill it up with a Focus Mate meeting so that you just meet with the person you've never met them before, and they go, hey, what are you working on? And I'll say, writing a blog post, for example. I'll say, what are you working on? They say, I'm, finishing a report. Great. Talk to you in 25 minutes. They have 25, 50, and I think 75 or 90 minutes or something. But anyway, that's a great resource. Those would be some of the ones I recommend. You are muted. There we go.
I love that.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
It's because we've been doing some work upstairs. I don't want it to sound.
No, it's okay.
And I feel that, yes, accountability has always been my thing, right?
Yeah.
I was in the fitness industry for 25 years, so a quarter of a century. That sounds terrible, because I loved doing it, but I didn't want to I started out just teaching step, and then I wanted to do this and then that, and then I wanted to teach everything because that's how my mind is. I want to learn new stuff all the time, and then I want to teach pump and combat and spin and this and that, and I would have no problem because, like you said earlier, I loved it. So I had no problem learning all the choreography for all these different things. And that was my focus for 25 years. Now, when I left to become a coach, and a lot of my clients were in the US. So for me, I'm in London. I didn't really need to get up before midday. And so even though I was totally used to, being in the centre of London, ready to teach a spin class at 7 and never thought anything about it, I found myself and so I would beat myself up, and I'm getting really lazy because I didn't have to be there.
Right.
Why couldn't I then go to the gym? No, I was getting lazy, and my children, well, I say they were children, teenagers they were back then. And I'd just call out in the end, go, "Oh, can you make me a cup of tea?" Because I didn't have to get up.
Right.
I didn't. And it was a real eye-opener because I realised, oh, well, for quarter of a century, I've just had to turn up somewhere. I'm never going to be late. I'm up, and I never thought I had a problem. But yes, having that accountability is massive. So would you say that's more so for people with ADHD? I mean, I think everybody needs a bit of accountability.
Yeah, again, that's like someone asked me, like, do you ever work with people who don't have ADHD? Absolutely. Because a lot of, just like some of the symptoms that ADHDers struggle the most with, other people that don't officially have ADHD also struggle with some of those things. The same thing applies on the positive, like, resources and support side. I can coach people who don't have ADHD. One of my longest standing clients is a neurotypical, or I jokingly refer to as a normie. But yeah, for folks with ADHD, what is really helpful is, like, one of the services that I offer for my clients, I call it accountability coaching, where it's text message only. And I'm just asking them at the beginning of the day, what are you going to work on today? Because sometimes just having that prompt is like, what am I going to work on today? And then I tell them, I only want to see 3 things. So pick 3. You can work on them in any order. You can bounce back and forth between them, but just stay on track with those 3. And just having someone neutral and supportive in their corner to help them through that and check in. Hey, how are things coming? They know to expect to hear from me. So they're working on it more so than they would, to your point. Like, if no one's waiting on you downtown for the spin class, you're not going to go. So they know they're probably not going to do the thing. So that's why they, pay for my accountability coaching.
That makes so much sense. Oh, having a few realizations here. But, but with regards to, do you find then with all the people that you work with, like, so, my only sort of point of reference is talking to this woman about the difference between introvert and extrovert.
Sure.
And she would say, well, so an introvert, certain work, certain jobs, the way they do things would be more suited to an introvert versus an extrovert. Is there the same thing with ADHD, or is it not? No sort of link?
There's absolutely a link. So as I look back throughout my career, and in Steve Jobs' famous commencement address, he said that something to the effect of, it's impossible to connect the dots looking forward, but it's always looking back that you can see, like, oh, okay, that's why things were the way they were. So for me, I never wanted to accept that enterprise level sales, like high level, like multi-million dollar, hundreds of thousands of dollar deals. Like, yeah, I can definitely do that. Except that I couldn't, because I was really good on the front end. But when it got to more of the, I told you about my accounting exam meltdown, panic attack, when it came to like crunching the numbers and then following through and staying on top of the stakeholders and the decision makers, I just got bored. So, but I kept thinking, well, it's because the company's not a good fit for me. Let me go look for something else that is. Until every single time when I got that kind of job, it just didn't keep me engaged. So people are probably listening, like nodding their heads, like, he's telling my story. That, we start out hot and we're like, this is the one. This is the thing that's going to change it all. I got this. Yes, I have found it. And I'd come home and tell my wife, like, week 2, and I'm all excited. She's like, okay, honey, like, that sounds really good. Let's see how it's going, 6 months or a year from now. Womp, womp, womp. Honey, I hate this job. This is terrible. Like, so anyway, the positives, the ones that would work. And again, everybody is different. So that doesn't mean that someone with ADHD couldn't do that job really well. It was just for me. But in general, I would say jobs that offer a lot of variety, jobs that offer us to use our creativity in some way, jobs that allow us to do something that we're passionate about. Because that was one of the other underlying things as I look back, Karen, is like I didn't care that much about the industries or like the products I was selling. But I'm using air quotes here. I thought I had to do a job like this to provide for my family. So if there's something that you really enjoy that you think you could find a career in, like I know that sounds so cliche and obvious, but I just never thought, I didn't even know like life coaching, especially ADHD coaching, was even a thing until I went to the International ADHD Conference in 2018 and I found out about it. And by the way, I was shocked that we actually have a conference. Like, wait, we're organized enough to have a conference? I got to see this. But anyway, it was just like sort of the Venn diagram. There's this concept. Are you familiar with the term ikigai?
Ikigai?
Ikigai. It sounds like a kid's like Play-Doh or something, like, ooh, ikigai. No, but it's a Japanese philosophy around the thing that gets you excited to wake up every day. And it's kind of this Venn diagram of like mission, purpose, values, the needs of the market, and like the overlap of all of those is your ikigai, like your happy place. So I feel like I've really found that in coaching because there's something new every day. And even when I have like recurring calls with clients, what I love about it is that no call is ever the same because we have like I call it a soft structure that we go through, but we're always talking about something different. So there's that variety. So it's always new to me.
Oh, again, and that just, yeah, that I can see. That's why I've always done what I was doing. And funnily enough, now I'm thinking, even when I started, I love doing this because I just get to speak to amazing people like yourself doing amazing things in their communities. And I'm learning, I'm constantly learning. And so, yes, it suits me. And it just started off as something to do in lockdown just to sort of lift people's spirits. I didn't know where it was going to go, where I was going to take it. And I went and got a job, selling somebody else's programs because, again, I thought I had to, I've got to do something. But the monotony of the same conversations was driving me mad. And I thought, something's got to, this has got to change. Now I'm thinking, I know when things clicked because when I took over the radio station, all of a sudden I was now accountable to all my hosts, which suits me. I need to be held accountable.
Yes.
So it's like, right, I've got to, and I will put my all into everything because it's not just about me anymore. So weirdly, I needed that thing. So it's, oh dear, it's should I go and see my doctor?
Karen, I mean, I thought about this during our last conversation. Like, age is nothing but a number. So it doesn't, you said you're considerably older. It doesn't matter how old or young you are. I mean, but you are clearly an example of, what? I was just going to say that regardless of an official diagnosis, you have found the things you're passionate about and you're wildly successful. So they might just say like, oh yeah, you have ADHD in a big way, but you're already doing all the stuff we would tell you to do. So, it's totally your journey.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny, but it's right. That's why I need, I do need help with the other stuff because it's just, it just doesn't suit me.
I jokingly say that I have a severe numbers allergy. That like anytime like my coach asks me like, okay, let's go over the report. Like, how did everything report? Like my palms are sweating and he's like, all right, I'm sending you over this Excel document. I'm like, or an Excel spreadsheet. Did you say a spreadsheet? Oh man, there's a lot of numbers on here. He's like, Ryan, it's going to be okay. There's only like 6 columns. I'll point to you like the areas. I'm like, okay, walk me through it. walk me through it, Ryan. Everything's going to be fine. So I just know myself well enough. Yeah.
And so, well, you've just said it there. That is the thing. You know, we all, this is, I suppose, the issue. We all have been conditioned to give our power away to some external force rather than understanding ourselves. We've got to, know thyself, isn't that? So, know thyself. When I get it, when we understand how we tick and all this, you're not broken. Even like me now with I've been told for a long while about, and I'm like, and it's a superpower. It doesn't have to be the negative thing that it seemed to be. Maybe more years ago, people would perceive it as, well, there's something wrong with you. No, there's nothing wrong with me. This is how my brain works. Might be slightly differently to how your brain works. And they're both equally amazing.
It's so interesting that you say that, because there's one of the kind of hot button topics in my world of ADHD content creation is the whole idea of the term superpower, because of the fact, like, yes, there are absolutely benefits to the way that I am wired cognitively, but without a doubt, there's also the downsides. Like, I really wish that I could open a spreadsheet and not feel overwhelmed, or that I could learn how to do a process and then not have to have it be explained to me several times. Or if my wife tells me like what our plans are, like I don't have to be like, so what's going on this weekend again? Meanwhile, I can remember, like yesterday, a client's like, oh my God, your memory is just incredible. I can remember that 6 months ago, he told me during a quick phone call that he has, a certain subscription membership. And I remembered that, but I can't remember that like our child's birthday party is this weekend or whatever. So that's why Dr. Ned Hollowell and Dr. Ratey, who I mentioned earlier, in their book, ADHD 2.0, they pose the idea that ADHD is more of a trait. Like, don't see it as a disorder, but instead it's like someone's either tall or they're short. Like, they had no control over that. That's just how they are. So their argument is like, that's also ADHD. Like, I'm not the tallest guy in the world. So I can't, for example, I play basketball. I can't dunk a basketball, but I have things that I do really well. Like, I'm faster than some of the guys that are taller. So whatever. So yes, there are strong sides of it, but there's also, I call it like a dark side of it too, where knowing those weaknesses, and it's so important, bring in support in the areas you struggle, so that you can, because now here's the difference between like Ryan in previous years versus Ryan of present day. Previous years, I was spending all this time in draining my battery from, like, I call it my attention battery, draining that down, trying to fill in the holes of my weaknesses instead of focusing on my strengths. So now instead, I lean into my strengths and I crush it. And then I have a team in place who I'm like, hey, can you please do this spreadsheet, do the accounts payable? Someone else help me with the marketing. Like, I just want to show up and help people. So now that's what I do.
And there you go. I suppose, weirdly, I just was fortunate enough to fall into doing something that suited me, which is maybe why it was covered up forever, because...
Well, yeah, because...
that's all I needed to do. Never needed to do the books. Never needed to sell anything. I just needed to turn up. Or, okay, it got a bit more challenging when I owned my own fitness studio, but still it was... Yeah, I probably wasn't still very good with a lot of those sides of things. But we fumbled through, right?
Exactly.
And now, thankfully, my team, and it's funny you say about, if my friend is listening to this, Carol, she will laugh, because I say to her, you're like my PA. It's like, what are we doing this weekend? Where are we going? Where is it? Because I'm not paying attention. All the pieces are starting to drop. But I suppose it is down to the way you look at it and also how it's making you feel. I've just been fortunate enough to not have it affect how I feel about myself, because I just found the right thing for me at the time. So I was never forced into that. I never wanted to go into the corporate world. There was a reason for that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So for me personally, I think I was just lucky that I happened to do those kinds of things. And now, I found myself back into something that works. But I can understand that if I had been forced into a quote unquote normal job,
Yeah, sure.
I really wouldn't have done very well. And then that would have had a knock-on effect to how I feel about myself and my own self-worth. So I totally understand how people can view this themselves, and it's not going to make them feel good about it. But there you go. You're not broken. There's nothing wrong. It's just understanding how you tick and working, like you said, with your strengths.
And what you said, Karen, is such an important point, because it reminds me of the revelation that I had when I got let go from my last corporate sales position. It does just beat up your self-esteem in such a big way, because it's like, man, I'm showing up. I was getting there early. It reminded me of the days in high school and college where I'd have to stay up late and get up early and do all the extra stuff. Except this time I was quote unquote flunking, in the sense that I was getting fired. So it's hard to not feel like you are not, it's hard to not feel badly about yourself when all these companies are, you're a very nice guy. We wish you the best, but like, you're not good at this job. Goodbye. The revelation I had, and this is what I want everyone to hear, please hear me on this. Your worth as a person is not determined by your productivity or your performance as a professional. So your worth as a human is, everyone is equal. We're all amazing human beings. And whether or not you get I'm using air quotes, meets most or needs improvement or exceeds expectations, I used to think that's what determined my value as a human being. And that's wrong. So that was the revelation. I'm like, wait a minute. At the time, it was like the last 10 to 12 years, I have looked through the wrong lens at this, because I'm using my boss's view, which is just this tiny sliver of the pie. Yes, I'm not good at this job that requires a ton of admin detail work. I've never been good at that. So why was I expecting that I'd be good at it when I grew up? And I'm like, I've just been in the wrong jobs. So then it led me to one of the biggest pillars of my coaching practice, which I call TUA, which stands for total unconditional acceptance. Because we can't expect anyone else to want to jump on board with our product or our service or our company if we don't believe in our own selves. So just accepting, like, hey, this is how I am. That part's not going to change. My ADHD is neutral. So let's just try to use the parts of it that are good and avoid the parts that are not so good.
There it is. There it is. Oh, mic drop.
Yeah, right.
So for the listeners, like if you're watching this is streaming out on social media or YouTube, you will have all of Ryan's details below. But for the listeners, they're just listening in and they're like, right.
I'd like to learn more
maybe
about
I
this
need some help. How do they find you?
So you can find me on social media. I'm really doing a lot of new stuff actually on LinkedIn. So you can look me up as Ryan Mayer on there. And also on YouTube and all of the other platforms, it's ADHD Coach Ryan. And on Instagram, it's ADHD Coach Ryan Mayer. But I'm putting out new content every single day. That's always free. And then you can always schedule a call with me. There's a link right in my profiles. That's a free call as well. Because I never want money to stand in the way of other people who are like me with ADHD to get the help that they need. So I have offerings from $11 up through $2,000 a month to work with me. But just know you're not alone. And the big thing I want to extend to the listeners is something that's brand new, Karen. This came out like a month ago. And it's my text message based course. No app, no password, no username, but all the things that Karen and I have been talking about, about remembering things or finding things that are good for folks like us. It's all in there. Everything I would coach my clients on comes right to your phone, since you're spending a lot of time on there anyway. So each day at 9 a.m. local time, wherever you are in the world, it can go to either WhatsApp or a text. And it'll be like, hey, it's Coach Ryan. And it's a little, kind of like the opening. I really liked the zippy opening here, Coffee with Karen. So it's that. And then you get a lot of tangible takeaways. So it's, several texts from me a day. And then you get these, like literally a checklist of what to do to find a job that will work with your ADHD brain. And if that helps people, you can always join one of my group coaching or one-on-one coaching. But the biggest thing is I just want to let everyone know you're not alone out there. So please reach out if you need help.
Absolutely fantastic. I love the fact that out of such a horrendous period, I mean, I would say, it's the worst period in human history on planet Earth. The lockdown, I don't do well as a caged animal. I don't do well at all.
Yeah.
However, the flip side of that is that actually, yes, it was awful and, but there have been some really positive things that have come out the other end. And do you think it is down to because people were forced at home? I think, for a while before, there had been a lot more talk about mental health issues. I'm not saying ADHD should come under that heading, but in the overall thing with people just struggling. And then lockdown hit, people forced into their home and I don't know, there's just been so much reevaluation that's gone on. And like you've actually turned it into something really, really positive.
Thank you.
See that's happening a lot now. People, like you said about that acceptance. Do you think people are more accepting of what is? Looking to change.
The mission of my coaching practice is to change the way that the world views people with ADHD, especially in the workplace. So I would say awareness is growing. I don't feel confident enough yet saying acceptance is anywhere close to where it should be. Last things, if you do need help, that text message based course, it's normally $100, but I want to give any of the listeners here 30% off. So you can put in discount code Karen30 to get 30% off. So Karen will have the links to all that, but just know you're not alone.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time today. So I will let you know. It's been a great conversation. And again, I've learned a lot. So thank you for that. And to everybody else, well, I will be back. Have a great weekend. I will be back next Tuesday with a Coffee with Karen. Bye for now.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
The Coffee with Karen podcast, a weekly chat show discussing everything from holistic health to current affairs from a mental, physical, and spiritual perspective. Get your weekly cup of positivity with a sprinkling of woo.